Okay, guys, we are live. Today, we are going to be discussing a topic. The force-free ideologues are out and about in full swing, doing what they always do, attempting to legislate our rights away when it comes to dog training. Let me just go live on Instagram as well here. Okay, so we're live on all three platforms, and we are going to be talking now about the big problem that we have with the force-free ideologues attempting to legislate away our ability to train in the way that we choose to train our dogs. So we're going to talk about how to deal with this because I saw actually Ivan Balabanov recently posted something about this, that fundamentally they're, as per usual, they're moving, they're trying to move to push legislation that basically would ban any kind of balance training. They cloak it in this context of we need to, what's the word? We need to create a registration system for dog trainers. Dog trainers need to be, registered with the government, because the government's so good at everything, right? Like we can really trust the government. So we need the government to certify that the dog trainers, that are training dogs are actually allowed to train dogs. Of course, the problem with this is that number one, the government knows nothing about dog training. So who do you think they're going to reach out to? Well, they're going to reach out probably to the veterinary associations, and the veterinary associations they know nothing about dog training, but everybody kind of looks at them in terms of them being the foremost experts when it comes to dog training. And most of the veterinarians are force-fed the force-free ideology in vet school. And they don't know any better because they're not dog trainers, they're vets. And their job is to prescribe medication and perform, surgery on animals. They know nothing about actually dog behavior and dog training. And then when you look at professions, and I say that word extremely loosely, like veterinary behaviorists, right? Of course, these people are also ideologues, and they can't train dogs either, but, they have this big title behind them, this big, PhD or whatever in animal behavior or whatever. And, fundamentally, again, they're also people that prescribe medication and, write a lot of things down on paper, but can't actually train dogs or fix dogs. So anyways, of course, these are the people that they're going to put in charge of the dog training industry if the force-free ideologues ever get their way. And of course, the only people that will then be certified to train dogs will be the force-free ideologues, right? And this is their big gambit that they are pursuing in order to control the market of dog training. See, we have a problem as people that train in a balanced way. And there's many ways, I use these terms very loosely: force-free trainer, balanced trainer. What you have to understand is, there's many different shades of balanced trainer. You've got the kook that doesn't believe that dogs should ever be given food in training, and that, everything should just be pressure and praise, and that the dog should do it just for the praise, right? Because, he heard that from his grandfather. And then, you've got guys that are, doing clicker training, and they're layering e-collar in, and they're doing all, a much more, let's say, harmonious and modern form of balance training. And, I'm sure it's the same with the force-free ideologues. You got a lot of the force-free people that use halties, which is a tool of force, but then you have others that will never even say no to a dog, so there's shades of everything. But what you have to understand is I use these general terms so that you can understand where they lie. Now, very, very important. The reason why I want to talk about this is because I saw the usual rhetoric underneath Ivan Balabanov's post. And every so often we see that, the force-free ideology, the positive only types make a move to try and push, whether it's a local government, a state government, a federal government, to ban various tools, various forms of training, so on and so forth. And they always kind of make these pushes, and then they retreat for a while, and then they make a push somewhere else, and then they retreat for a while. And the thing that they have that the balanced trainers in general don't have is time. And the reason why they have time is because they're not busy training dogs. They don't have facilities, they don't have lots of clients. They've got a lot of time on their hands. And when you have time on your hands, you have the time to make trouble. You have the time to lobby politicians. You have the time to, collect signatures and take part in fake studies and all this type of stuff, so that when you go to the government, according to the science says, right? And the average idiot knows nothing about how a scientific study should be conducted. What is a good study and what is a bad study. So of course, the science says that positive only training is the best way to train, so it must be true, right? So, and this is how they kind of push their political agenda. They know they can't win organically. They cannot win organically, because the worst thing that ever happened to people on social media, the worst thing that ever happened to the positive only trainers, the force-free trainers, was this, right? We all have a video camera now, right? So you got some kid that took my elite off-leash obedience course 3 months ago, and he's walking his dog off-leash in public, and the average person is approaching him, asking him if he's a professional dog trainer, right? Whereas Karen, who's been doing it for 15 years with cookies and hot dogs, still needs to keep her dog under threshold and stay 30 feet away from other dogs at all times, because Fluffy, becomes over aroused because we think he might have been traumatized 10 years ago, when another dog, passed by him and he farted and scared himself, right? So that's a big problem for them. That's a big problem for them. And in this day and age, everybody has a video camera. And back in the day, right, they would just tell these really cool stories. Like, there'd be like multiple paragraphs of how they fixed this dog supposedly, or that dog, and they'd be writing all these blogs. They would never really show anything other than like training a dog in an empty room. But, the problem is now everybody's able to video what they're doing. So the truth, as it always does, began to leak out. And now you can see the truth in 4K, right? And the kid that took my elite off-leash obedience course now has better obedience than Karen, that's been doing it for 20 years, and gone and done all the Karen Pryor clicker academies and bullshit like that, right? And can probably train a dog better than her in 3 months. And it's a huge problem for them, right? So the problem is, again, all these balanced trainers, we're training dogs for a living, right? We got a lot of clients, and they don't. So they got the time. They don't have any money. They don't have the clients, and people are more and more going into balanced training because they actually want results, and the results are objectively visible on video. However, the force-free trainers, they have time, and they still have credential, right? Credential in this day and age is not a real thing, right? Credential is like this, okay? This is not real. This is not real, right? This is $5, but we all know that the government can print as many of these as they want, and it's not actually backed by anything other than the government says it's good, therefore it must be good, right? But if people knew that this is not backed by gold, it's not backed by anything of value, this is not real. Credentials are like this. They print them out, right? They print them out, they print them out, they print them out. And everybody just we're still in this stage where we're more and more, we're moving away from credentials, in the sense that a lot of times people are now becoming much more, skeptical of these credentials and understanding that a lot of them are bullshit. However, we're still in the age where credentials do carry weight, especially when you go to the government and you say to the government, hey, I've got this credential that says I know what I'm talking about when it comes to dog training. No, I have not trained any dogs, right? Not in real life. In my dreams, maybe, on my vlogs, maybe, but I haven't actually done anything. But I got this piece of paper, and it says I know what I'm doing. So you got to listen to me. And, Joe Schmo politician who doesn't know anything. Okay, that sounds like it makes sense. Yeah, I like puppies. Oh, this is easy. This is going to look good for me. I'll go along with, whatever bullshit you're peddling, Karen, right? And that's what's going on. But as per usual, Ivan Balabanov's post is informative. It tells me that most people haven't learned anything in the preceding 10 years, right? Because they don't understand, we need to reach out and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and, those bad trainers that are making mean videos with the e-collar, that's the problem, and blah. All horseshit. They don't understand, okay? There is only one way that you defeat these people. These people are moving legislatively. They're moving legislatively because they still have the fake credentials, right? Which is important from an optics standpoint. They have the fake credentials, which is important from the optics standpoint, and that's what they're using to, support their sandcastle, so to speak. And then they also have the moral high ground, right? We've learned nothing in the last 10 years. They have the moral high ground, right? I would never train a dog with fear and pain. I'm a good person. I love my dog. Well, I train with modern science, so I don't need fear and pain to train a dog. Maybe, when you learn something and you go to university for another 4 years, you might also learn how to train a dog without fear and pain, right? Very smug, very self-aggrandizing. Of course, again, show me. Never. They will never show you, right? Or they'll show you a dog in an empty room or a dog in an empty field. I don't need to show you. There's scientific studies. And again, the average person does not understand how scientific studies work. They don't understand that scientific studies can explain everything from a pile of shit on the ground to, quantum physics, right? And they can be worth as much of that as that pile of shit on the ground and worth as much as, the collider that they have now that they can study atoms in and all that stuff, right? So science exists across a very wide gradient, and people use that term way too loosely. But here's the way you win. If balanced trainers ever got serious and said, okay, these people are a real danger. Like, they're going to move behind our backs. They're going to legislate our ability to train dogs. And you as dog owners that are watching this, they're going to say that you are now a criminal if you want to have your dog off leash with an e-collar. That you are now a criminal if you want to correct your dog for being aggressive, right? They want to criminalize your ability to control your dog, your ability to correct your dog as appropriate, your ability to manage your dog. In Sweden, you don't believe me? In Sweden, dog crates are illegal, guys. Dog crates in Sweden are illegal, right? In Germany, it is illegal to use a prong collar or an e-collar. Right? That's how crazy. Now, of course, everybody still does it that's serious about training their dog, but now they're criminals. It doesn't matter that they still do it. What matters is that they are criminals, right? They've become criminals. They force an average person says, okay, well, I want my dog to be off leash and I don't want to worry that, he might decide to run off or he might chase after a bunny, go across the road and get hit by a car. But I want him to have that off leash freedom. I don't want to keep him on this 6-foot tether all the time and only be able to let him off in this isolated fenced-in area. I want him to be free, right? Now, if you want to train your dog properly, you are a criminal, right? If it's not hot dogs and hope, you are a criminal. And that is a huge problem, right? But the only way to defeat these people, it comes from, there's multiple angles that you have to take, right? Yes, it is ironic that Herm Sprenger, which I still get my prong collars from, by the way, is a German company, right? It's insane, but that's how crazy the world has got. Now, we here in North America, we're lucky. We don't have these rules yet. But these people are always moving behind the scenes. They're always pushing. They're always waiting for an opening. And if you don't take them seriously, they will get it done. They will. People are like, Haz, what are you going to do if they pass that rule? Well, I'm going to still train dogs. It's not going to be a problem for me, right? But, of course, a lot of things are going to have to change. And the quality of product that goes to the customer is, of course, going to be severely impacted. And probably my business, like the way I give my business, the way I, perform training for people, so on and so forth, that would change significantly. But would I still do it? Yeah, of course, I'd still do it. But anyways, all these idiots in Ivan Balabanov's comments going on about the same old tired bullshit. Here's how you beat them. Right now, they are winning the credential war, they're winning the culture war, and they're winning the what's the word? The legal battle, right? And that's because they're operating on multiple fronts, right? They have a propaganda front that presents social media content that heightens emotion and removes logic. So something like a sad looking dog with like a prong collar on its neck and its head drop down low and say, if you love your dog, don't train with pain. Something like that, right? Very emotive. So the average, soccer mom looks at this and goes, oh my God, I don't want to do that to my puppy. I love him. I would never do such a thing to him. Oh, I will never train with pain. Oh yeah, that tool is bad, right? Meanwhile, the same idiot who posted that meme is promoting a Halti, which literally works with physical, it works on the pain spectrum as well. You pull me, I yank your face sideways. That's uncomfortable, so you don't pull me anymore. Anyways, point being, you've got the propaganda arm. Then you've got the organized lobby, okay? These are the various not-for-profits, the NGOs, the not-for-profit organizations that push the force-free ideology. They push the agenda. They push it publicly and they push it legislatively. They push it in local areas like local cities, municipalities. They push it statewide and then they push it federally, right? And that's how they do it. So you've got the propaganda arm and then you've got the legislative arm. So here's what balanced dog trainers need to do if they want to take it seriously. Number one, there's a number of organizations that claim to represent balanced dog trainers. Let me just check my Instagram stream, guys, and see if it's good. If it's not good, I am going to pull the Instagram stream. I think it's good. I think the Instagram stream is good. So I'm going to leave it up for now. Anyways, where was I? So if we're serious as balanced dog trainers and we truly want to defeat this threat and protect, our way of our ability to train dogs, there's no way, like I said already, balanced trainers exist across a very wide spectrum. But our ability to train dogs in the right way, in the natural way, in the way that actually works, not in, Karen's crazed utopian ideology, right? Then what we need to do is we need an organization, a body that employs lawyers, that donates to campaigns, and that is a voice for us on the political and legal front, right? So the IACP, the International Association of, I can't remember, professional dog trainers or whatever it is, right? They claim that they do this. I have not seen that they do it. So they must suck at it, right? But we need an actual organized body that's like very aggressive, that's very good at this. The second there's any kind of push for a law to be passed, let's say in like a city in West Virginia, they're there. They've already submitted a letter to the city opposing the bill to ban prong collars and citing the reasons why prong collars are a good idea and why they're beneficial and why they're a necessary tool in dog training, right? The second someone tries to ban, e-collars in New York State or to legislate the state of dog training, where it's like you can't train unless you have a special dog training license given to you by the city. And that means that, of course, the force-free ideologues would be in charge of who gets a license because only they can determine who is a real dog trainer and who is not, who's got the credentials to be a dog trainer, right? They would immediately, no, this is a bad idea. Regulating the dog training space in this way would create a monopoly and blah, blah, blah. And, the people that, are pushing for this legislation are only doing so that they can have an advantage from a business perspective, all of this type of stuff. So that's their job, right? You have you have a lobby organization that operates legally and politically. And of course, we all pay into it. That's the way it would work. We would all pay into it, right? We would all have a membership. We would all pay into it. And they would go and lobby on our behalf, municipally, provincially, or statewide, and then federally, right? But now here's the more important battle. And this is where everybody fucks up. Okay. Oh, you know, like we just need to show good training and blah, blah, blah. And don't get me wrong. Good training is good to show. But we've been showing good training for 15, 20 years now on the internet. Right? Now, what that does is it gets us clients, which is good. But the problem is that's not all you need to do in order to truly defeat them. Because remember, these people take the moral high ground. Yeah, their dogs are off leash. Yeah, they fixed that aggressive dog, but at what cost? At what cost? And then they create all these scenarios of imagined harm. And, you know, again, oh, you know, you don't have to do it like that. You can do it like our way. And there's no fear and pain and violence and, you know, blah, 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 all these emotive language, all lies, but it still sounds good to the uneducated person. They take the moral high ground. The only way you defeat them in the culture war, and make no mistake, if you don't win the culture war, politics is downstream from culture. You will lose the political war. In Western Europe, they lost the culture war. They didn't even engage in the culture war, right? A lot of people like me because I will engage in the culture war, right? So people say, oh, it has. Why do you say those things? Why do you post those pictures? Why did you make fun of dog trainer Karen? Is it necessary? Yes, it fucking is necessary. I'm engaging in the culture war. The culture war is not just one with logic and facts. The culture war is won by diminishing the position that the other side holds. Now, dog trainer Karen, right? Obviously, you know, dog trainer Karen is the simulacrum of the force-free dog trainer, usually short hair, morbidly obese, multicolors in the hair, rings everywhere, tattoos everywhere. Obviously someone who's, you know, not particularly well-balanced mentally, and which is what led them to that unnatural ideology, right? We can speculate on why they might be in that situation. It doesn't matter really. From a dog training perspective, these are the types that stereotypically, and stereotypes exist for a reason, they're generally based in fact, right? These are the types that exist that push that ideology. And I lean into those stereotypes, and I have no problem addressing those stereotypes, belittling those stereotypes, and highlighting the idiocy of their position. I'm not playing nice. I'm not trying to convince dog trainer Karen that balanced training makes sense for the dog and is the most, you know, humane, ethical, and efficient way to train a dog, an effective way to train a dog. I'm not going to convince her. She's a crazy person. They're all crazy people, right? You don't negotiate with terrorists because terrorists are inherently unreasonable people. And you might think I'm being extreme to say this, but these are true. These people are literally that, right? They're insane people. And the reason why they believe what they believe is because they've given up logic for their utopian beliefs, right? Like any reasonable person that has half a brain that works in any capacity with dogs, right, would immediately identify, right, that, hey, sorry, I got distracted by the chat there, would immediately identify, right, that, okay, this way of training doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for the dog. It doesn't make sense for the people. It doesn't work. But these people are not reasonable people. You can't negotiate with them. Oh, hi, Ivan. I see you're in the chat. I don't know how to scroll back. Ivan says, form a coalition of lawyers, scientists, and trainers. File complaints against false advertising and fear-based misinformation. Good talk. Yeah, I believe so. I believe that. I think that's a great idea. And Ivan, I'm saying this. I don't know about the IACP. To me, it doesn't look like they're very aggressive. It doesn't look like they do a lot. But to me, this is what they should be doing. We all pay. I would pay. As a professional dog trainer, I would pay, and I would encourage my clients to pay, right? You have individual memberships, and then you have professional memberships, right? We all pay into this lobby organization that we know is going to stand up for our rights as professional dog trainers, you know, to train in a balanced way and to train in a natural way. right? And we know that they're going to go and address all of these, individual pushes for political, the politicians to ban this tool or that tool or this form of training or that form of training. The force-free ideologues do it, right? The Humane Society of the United States, what is that? The SPCA, what is that? These are all lobby organizations. They don't actually really do much, but they do lobby, and they take a lot of money in donations. We need our own version of that. I don't think the IACP is that. Maybe you could turn them into that, but they're not that. So, but you, Ivan, me, all the other dog trainers out there, we could say, listen, not only are we going to pay, and I would pay a lot, especially if I knew that they were doing good work, right? But we could have, we could get our clients to pay. We could get people that follow us to pay. And they would be like, hey, guys, they're going to take away your right to use your e-collar with your fear-reactive Rottweiler. That Rottweiler that you couldn't take out in public, but we trained him, and, now you're able to take him everywhere, and he's able to go off leash in the woods, and for a certainty that he's going to come back because, you have the e-collar, which is a nice insurance policy, on the dog, right? They're going to take away your right to use that. They're going to criminalize that. You don't think Sally is going to pay so that she can keep taking her Rottweiler out in the woods? Of course she would, right? So we need that. But then we have the culture war. The culture war is even more important than that. Not that that's not important. We must have that as well. The culture war is extremely important. Now, everybody can fight the culture war in different ways. And I suggest that people, like, for instance, Ivan, if you're still watching, you are a very different person than me, right? The way that you are going to fight the culture war would be very different than me because we have fundamentally different personalities. And I'm not saying anybody should be anybody. They shouldn't pretend. You should never pretend to be someone you are not. The way I fight it is I'll do a skit. I'll make fun of them, right? I'll highlight the insanity of their position. I will make people laugh at them. And that is extremely powerful, right? It's not something that people say, oh, he's just doing it for, to get his rocks off. It's like, no, I do that very intentionally. When I put the blue hair wig on and I do the skits, yeah, it's fun. But at the same time, it's also extremely intentional. It's to make people think, because there is a huge power in humor. There is a huge power in laughter, right? Very, very important. And if you can actually highlight the insanity of their position, right? And you can get the average person to be like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Who would want to be like that, right? That would have an enormous impact on them. And remember, culture is always upstream of politics. Politics is always reacting to culture, right? Politics is always a little bit behind. So we must win the culture war. So the culture war is that. The culture war is, what I think you do, Ivan, where you have these podcasts, you have these discussions with professionals, and then most importantly, continuing to show the work, right? But I think the culture war is where we as balanced dog trainers really fuck up, because a lot of times people are trying to reach across the aisle. And I don't think that's the way to do it. They will come to you. Many of them, don't get me wrong, like a lot of them that aren't so strong in their convictions, they will come to you when they see that they're losing the culture war. Believe it or not, the culture war, when people are laughing at these people, when people are saying, these are ridiculous people, I don't want to be like these people, right? That is actually more impactful, believe it or not, than you showing 10 dogs that you fully rehabbed from fear reactive or aggressive or whatever it is. You fully rehab them. You can show that as much as you like, but that is not as powerful as satirizing these people, making them a laughing stock, isolating them, marginalizing them. That is much more powerful. And that will actually bring way more people to your side than just showing good work. Not that we shouldn't show good work. We always should. So, what does Ivan say here? Sorry, guys, I'm going fast. I'm missing comments, but, Ivan says, I agree very much. But as you said, we need some unified front. I agree. So look, obviously, I think the culture war is something that we will all fight individually in our way. And I think that the more dog trainers realize, especially content creators, right? Those of us that create content as well as train dogs, right? We all do it in our own way. I don't know that that's something that you would organize as much, but what we need to organize is truly an organization that will represent our best interests, both federally and locally, right? And a lot of other organizations have that, right? So like I used to be involved actually in the reptile industry many, many years ago, like 15 years ago. And the reptile industry has an organization called USARK. And everybody that kept reptiles would donate to them, because every municipality would try to ban reptiles. You know, every so often they'd say, oh, we're going to ban pythons. Okay, everyone says, okay, pythons, we must ban pythons, right? Well, and it sounds good because the average person doesn't know that pythons literally describes like 1,000 different types of snakes from this big to 30 feet long, right? So instead of saying, oh, we just want to ban the 30 feet one, they said, oh, we're going to ban all pythons. And then USARK comes in and says, oh, we don't need to ban pythons. Here are the statistics on actual, python attacks. You're more likely to be struck by lightning than to be injured by a python, blah, 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 right? And this is what existed in the reptile industry, which is much smaller and poorer than the dog industry. And they were actually very effective and still are, to my understanding, right? We as dog trainers, it's insane to me that we don't have it, especially because we could reach across the aisle to the hunting people who are much more actually powerful than you guys still have me? Let me know, guys, if you can still see me. If you can see me, I'll keep going. If not, I'll wrap it up. I just lost my camera for a second there. Okay, good. I don't know what happened. We have a winter storm right now, so internet might not be as good as it should be. All right, good stuff. Anyways, I think I've said what I need to say on this topic, but I'm big on culture war. I'm big on culture war. We all have our skills, right? Like there's some of us that are organizers. There's people out there that are organizers, right? And that's their thing. They organize, and they really are like, okay, I can get a bunch of people together and I can get them all going in the same direction, so on and so forth. And then we have people that are cultural influencers. They're maybe a little bit more individualistic. Thank you. They're a little more individualistic, right? And their mind is more like creative, right? So I'm not an organizer. I'm not the guy that's going to reach out to like 50 other people and, set up like the not-for-profit and do all that stuff. It's just not me. I don't do that. I'm not very good at that stuff, right? I recognize other people are. I'm not. But I like making content and I like training dogs. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at, right? So I'll do that, right? And I'll do that in a way that, of course, will help the cause. So we all, we can all do something. We can all do something, but we need to realize, like Ivan said, and in his post, that these people are moving. They are moving, and they're a lot more organized than we are, and they have the time to be more organized than we are, and they have existing structures like the SPCA, the behavioral scientists in many cases, and behavioral animal scientists or whatever, right? That exist to push their ideology. We don't have those entrenched structures yet. We don't have those entrenched organizations yet. And we all need to create one and do what we can, right? So I'm not the kind of guy that's going to create one, but I will 100% get behind one and push, right, as much as I can. Like I would end every stream by saying, like, if the IACP was actually doing what I thought they should be doing, which is what I described, I would end up, hey guys, make sure you join the IACP. They're fighting for our rights, blah, 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 blah. Right? And I think any other decent content creator, whether it's American Standard Dog Training or any of the other ones, would do the same thing. And in a very short period of time, you'd have a lot of support for whatever organization it is that stood up and said, we're taking the lead here and we're going to be really aggressive about fighting for your rights to be able to train and handle your dogs in, a balanced way, in a reasonable way. Right? Also, things like funding studies. Man, you guys would not believe how easy it is to actually, like, you think a scientific study, like when we all think of scientific studies, right? We all think of like this like lab and like, you know, there's like all these people in white coats and like everything's sterile and it's like this expensive operation. That is not how most studies operate. That is not how most scientific studies operate, right? If I really wanted, right, I've actually talked to Stephanie Cotty. She's a animal behaviorist, right? I've actually talked to her a while ago about doing a study. It's actually not that hard, right? Most studies are actually survey based, you know, and if we had a lobby group like that, they could be funding studies like this. They could be doing studies like this all across North America and actually creating real scientific data to support, and not that there isn't, there already is, right? Real scientific data to support, you know, this fight and this you know, thing that is balanced training, right? And if we had an organization that everybody trusted, we could also rely on it to police our own to some level, where we could say, listen, you over there that is like beating the shit out of your dog for absolutely no reason, you're not one of us. You can't do that. That's not okay, right? Because of course you have bad actors. Now, contrary to popular belief, even though I'm against bad actors, I don't think bad actors truly impact this fight as much as some people would like them to believe. Oh, if those guys didn't show the e-collar in a bad way, then we wouldn't have this problem. Are you crazy? The e-collar simply existing is a problem, right? It works on the concept of the second you said e-collar, electric collar, shock collar, it doesn't matter how many bad guys post bad videos or don't. The fact that it's even called that is more than enough for them to fight against it. Even if there was only good videos of e-collars out there, they would still fight against it and do everything they could to get it banned. The fact that the prong collar is called a prong collar, that's the problem. That's why they called their face halter a gentle leader, right? It doesn't work on the concept of gentleness. It works on discomfort, right? I yank your face sideways. If you pull me, it's uncomfortable. Don't pull me anymore, right? But they called it the gentle leader for a reason, right? If we called our prong collar, maybe if they called the prong collar the, the fairy collar, we wouldn't have these problems. But they weren't thinking that far ahead at that time, right? Anyways, Stalwin German Shepherd says, studies in South Australia and great lobbying overturned the ban, saying IGP was training attack dogs. Yeah, and that's fantastic. And there are incidences where you see that trainers do get together and fight against these bad actors. They fight against these people and they can win. But in most cases, we're playing reactively. We're catching up. They've already gone and banned something. And then all of a sudden, all the trainers go, oh, crap, we got to do something. They almost banned IGP, right? Thank God they managed to make IGP like a heritage thing because it's so old and it's from like over 100 years ago. They almost banned IGP. I don't know if it's still banned in Austria, but it was going to be banned. It was on its way to being banned. And luckily, a bunch of, I think the German guys got together and they made it like a heritage thing, right? And that's the only thing that I think would save it. And I think it's still banned in some Western European countries. I could be wrong. Yeah, and they get breeds banned and all sorts of things, right? And the other thing too, the other part of the culture war is stop fucking hiding. I hate hiding, right? Like this concept that's like we have to always pretend things are not what they are, right? If you are training, right, the dog, and you say, okay, in this moment, stress is necessary. I must create an aversive experience for the dog in this moment, right? And the reason why I'm doing it is not because I'm angry. It's not because I'm drunk. It's not because, mommy didn't love me enough when I was a baby. It's because it's going to create this tangible outcome that is actually going to help the dog in the future, right? Instead of, oh, this barely tickles the dog. People will say this kind of shit, right? Oh, it barely tickles the dog, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, in some cases, we are creating you know, specific targeted moments of aversive experience for the dog for various tangible reasons. And as long as you can identify why you're doing what you're doing, most reasonable people will say, okay, that makes sense, right? Especially when you can link it back to nature, right? Because everything that we do only works if it's natural, right? A lot of people, the problem is the word natural has been ruined. The word natural has been ruined because, you know, you have all these like guys walking around pretending to be like the next dog whisperer, like alpha rolling dogs, and, you know, saying, oh, I'm training in like a natural way. I'm pretending to be a fucking dog. And that's why what I do is what I'm doing all these things. I'm biting the dog and all this crap, right? There's people that legitimately will bite a dog. I've seen it, right? We don't need to go that far. But what natural is natural means that we're following the rules of nature, right? Whether it's using pleasure, stress, joy, pain, all of these things exist on a spectrum. Pleasure can be minimal or it can be extreme. Pain can be minimal or it can be extreme. Pain in and of itself is not evil, right? Stress in and of itself is not evil. Pleasure in and of itself is not good, right? These are simply things that exist. They're natural processes that exist. And when you train across the entire spectrum of natural processes, it turns out, of course, you have very effective results because that is the language of dog. That is the language of nature that they communicate in. But people don't, I think, communicate that well enough. Luan says breeders should show more videos of dams correcting their puppies and puppies fight playing. Yeah, I agree. People don't realize how brutal dogs can be with one another. There's nothing you can do to a dog that other dogs won't do 10 times worse, right? But again, it's all about effectively communicating these concepts. So that's what I have to say on the topic. I'm going to try to continue to do what I do to, you know, fight the culture war, so to speak. And I want you guys to remember, remember when Zach George came for me? Remember that? Do you see how quickly he stopped fucking coming for me? Because I didn't treat him like an equal. I didn't say, Zach, I want to talk. I didn't say, I didn't even try to argue science with him. He's an inherently unreasonable person, right? I said, oh, okay, Zach, $50,000 on the line. Let's go here and let's let the dogs do the talking. We're going to take our dogs for a walk in New York City off leash. I'm going to put $50,000 in escrow. No tools, no treats, no balls, nothing. Just the dogs off leash. We're going to go for a walk and we can talk about science on that fucking walk. Do you see how fast that little son of a bitch disappeared? And he doesn't even want to hear my name anymore. Right? Because that truly scared him. I didn't treat him as a peer because he's not a peer. Right? He's not someone that I consider to even be like remotely respectable in the space. He has a following, but having a following, so does OnlyFans girls, right? Like having a following does not make you an inherently respectable person. I treated him as he was. And I said, no problem. We're talking about dog training. Let's go. Let's let the dogs do the talking. And we can talk while we walk our dogs. And that little fuck disappeared like that. Like that. And I'll never hear from him again. Not unless he thinks he's in a real winning position and he's not going to have to put up or shut up. And I know a lot of his followers were like, okay, Zach, go with that has guy. Show him, Zach. Right? I didn't even say IGP, let's go and do folk, like, I didn't even do any of that. I said, bro, we're just going to go for the city. Like, we're going to go for a walk in the city. And we're going to let the dogs do the talking. Nothing fancy, just a walk. Our clients, the clients that you're supposedly helping, do this every day. So we should be able to do this. This is the bare minimum. And he couldn't even hang out for that. Like he was gone, right? That's how you deal with people like that. You diminish them. And then, of course, I made fun of him and I trolled him a little bit, right? Because that's how you deal with those types of people. What do we got here? But again, that's my personality, right? Every so often, one of these little weasels comes out of the woodwork and tries something, and they find out really quickly. I'm not the one, because I'll meet you in that arena. DF, I can't even say your name. In France, every single tool is being banned at once right now. Only flat and harness, not even slip. And by the way, guys, this idea, I'll speak to this. I've been in Europe multiple times, right? This idea in Western Europe that dogs are doing great without tools and without balance training is asinine. Number one, if you go into North America, okay, don't let them tell you. They'll all claim, oh, yeah, we don't need this, blah, 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 blah. You ever go anywhere in Europe, most of the time, you don't see dogs out and about. It's not like here, if I go walking in any like random neighborhood, I'm going to see like a lot of dogs and big dogs, like a lot of big ones. Like you'll see, you know, big Malamutes, German Shepherds, all of this type of stuff, Dobermans, Mastiffs. You'll see them all over, all across North America. You see tons of dogs. You go in Europe, you don't actually see that many. And then the ones you see, they're always little. They're like little dogs, or they're like very like low dogs. Like, you know, like the kind of like, they have a very like low paw. You very rarely see anyone walking like big, strong, powerful dogs. The only time you see those dogs is behind the garden gate, right? You don't see people walking these dogs in the towns on the regular basis. It's actually quite rare, right? But you see like these kind of like very low, like medium-sized dogs, like, you know, kind of very like low behavior. And then you see like the little dogs. You don't see like someone just walking like, you know, a big, strong Doberman or, you know, the Rottie or whatever. Like, it's very rare to actually see that. Believe it or not, you know, I was actually quite surprised. Every time I've gone to Europe, I've observed that to be the case. There's just not that many dogs out and about. And I talk to people in Europe. I have many clients in Europe, ironically, that take my online courses, right? And they take a risk to do it, but they do it, right? Because they want to be able to do what they see us doing here in North America with their dog, right? And they say, oh yeah, you know, like we all use these tools if we want our dog to do these things, but you know, we have to be careful. We have to hide them, so on and so forth, right? Yes, exactly. Instead of banning strong breeds, they ban tools. Of course, it's like saying, if you ever said to the horse people, look, no bits or spurs allowed anymore, but you can keep your horses. I bet you that would change a lot the type of horses people have if they even had horses. A lot less people would have horses, number one, and the types of horses they had would be very different. It's the same, right? So anyways, yeah, like don't let them tell you in Europe that they don't need these tools and everything's going great. It's not, and they do. So. Rip says, yes, the covert agenda is the elimination of dogs as pets and companions. Exactly. Exactly. All right, guys, this was a good one. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining. You know, I want you guys all to remember that these people are a very real threat to our dogs, our industry, our ability to, you know, train and handle our dogs in the way that we see fit and in a way that actually works and makes sense. You know, oh, by the way, Black Friday, all my stuff's on sale. So go check it out, shieldk9online.com. And my trainer's course, guys, my trainer and certification course, also 20% off. I am closing that course again December. So I opened it very briefly for a few days here. I'm going to close it again in December. Thank you all for joining. I hope you guys all have a fantastic one. Ivan, thanks for jumping on. I'll see you guys on the next one.